The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The scientists, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a dark new age.
Today we step into a world of non-Euclidean angles and unfathomable horror with Call of Cthulhu.
Fast-moving podcast presents The Tome Travelers.
So hi, and welcome back to Tome Travelers. I'm one of your hosts, John, and today I'm actually joined by three guests, and we actually have Sam.
Hello.
Who is usually with us on Tome Travelers, but we also have today, we have Matt Quiett.
Hey!
And we have John Quiett.
Hello.
We're the two keepers for the Masks of Nyarlathotep podcast, called The Nerds Domain Presents Masks of Nyarlathotep.
Yeah, which according to my research, is the longest running actual play podcast for Call of Cthulhu currently. As far as you are a single plot line. Now there are different events and time jumps.
Sure, yeah.
But you are a single timeline as far as the events taking place.
Yeah. We call madness. We choose to keep the madness going in the same story for a long time.
I mean, there are a few interludes, or what do we call them?
Side quests.
Side quests that intersperse in there every now and then. But yes, for the most part, it is a.
It's a little over 6 years. We've been 2013.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow,
madness just
time
makes
flies
the time
when
fly.
the madness sets in. Yes.
Yep.
Obviously, we're talking about Call of Cthulhu.
Yes.
That is going to be today's big topic. And we're talking about it as the game property. It's kind of funny. We talked about earlier on this show, we talked about the game Cthulhu Tech, which I think is funny. We did the futuristic version of Cthulhu rather than go with the original property and start there.
Yeah.
But so that's going to be our topic for the day. And I wanted to approach it from two different directions for the way that we do this podcast, because we always talk about the history of the product. And I'm like, well, this is a bigger topic than just the role-playing game. This is the Call of Cthulhu, mythos in of itself. So I wanted to list off of things that we'll start off with when Call of Cthulhu was written, because there's some crazy stuff from history that I think you'll get a kick out of. So Call of Cthulhu, the story was released in February of 1928. Other things that happened that year. We have the discovery of Homo erectus by Davidson Black. Sam's over there laughing at me already. What?
I can never get over being 10 and hearing that. And
Homo
laughing,
erectus?
giggling.
Yeah. I'll let you get away with it. Anna Anderson claims to be Anastasia, the daughter of Tsar Nicholas II. We had the first solo flight from England to Australia. That's kind of a cool one.
Yeah.
It is.
The first air-conditioned office building was that year.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, and thank goodness for that.
It's a banner year.
Which, at the same time, when you think of air conditioning and you think of H.P. Lovecraft, and he actually has another story dealing with air conditioning and how it preserved a body,
Oh, yeah.
a living body. I was
Yeah.
like, he was ahead of his time.
He was.
Then we have Scotch tape was marketed by 3M Corporation.
Better
Wow.
living through chemistry.
Other things like pop culture. So Big Rock, Candy Mountain, and the song I Want to Be Loved by You were the big hits that year. And then we have, as far as movies, Skyscraper by Cecil B. DeMille. And this was the year of the release of Steamboat Willie by Disney.
Wow.
Right on, yeah. Every time I hear Big Rock Candy Mountain, all I can think of is the Unicorn. The Unicorn YouTube channel or show where they take Charlie to the Candy Mountain.
Yes.
Charlie, let's go to the mountain.
Yeah.
Which is maddening in and of itself.
It is,
Yes. Oh no! For me, I think of "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" because that's actually in the soundtrack as well.
That is in there, yeah.
Yeah, I've not seen that.
You haven't?
Oh, it's a good one.
I haven't either.
See.
Never seen it. Everyone tells me, "Oh, it's great." And
It's great, but I think that you would not like it because it is a retelling of Odysseus. It's a it's
Gotcha.
a modernized
oh,
retelling.
that's
of
right.
It.
That's what I'm
Well,
hearing about that.
Into the era. It's not
Yeah.
exactly modern retelling. But
Oh, yeah.
I think it was pretty good. So
Yeah. Oh no, I liked it a lot. And,
Yeah.
some of the music on it was actually really good.
Yeah.
So now we're jumping forward in time to the release of this game. So the events of the year of creation. This was Call of Cthulhu, the RPG, in 1981, and it was from Chaosium, and it was designed by Sandy Peterson. So other events that year. That was the year of the Iran hostage crisis and the attempted assassination of President Reagan. Songs of that year that were top on the radio: Betty Davis Eyes.
Oh, what was her name?
Betty Davis.
No.
The
No,
singer.
no.
Because I had her on my phone for a bit, and then for some reason, I don't have it anymore.
Betty White.
It's right there in the title, guys. It's Betty Davis.
No, the singer. The name of the singer.
In the Air Tonight. Nice little Phil Collins there for you. Kids in America, which I hear all the time.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with that
Yeah.
one.
The answer
I
is
think-
Kim Carnes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure Kids in America is one of those where it's like, I don't know what that song is, and you play, oh, yeah, it's that.
We're the kids in America.
Oh, yeah.
yes,
That- Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
You
there we
got
go.
it, Sam. As soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, that's a thing I know.
Oh, yeah. So, movies of this year. And these are some movies that when I was a kid, these were awesome. But it's weird how they line up. So we have Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Uh-huh.
Epic movie.
Yes.
Clash of the Titans.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, Clash of the Titans, comparing the effects of Clash of the Titans to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, but it's Harryhausen.
Yeah,
Like, I get what you're saying, but Ray Harryhausen is just
Yeah.
Class of his own.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you compare those movies, I've heard it like literally discussed, these two films, and it was just such a different mindset between the creators and what they were trying to accomplish.
yeah.
Well,
And-
George Lucas ruined Ray Harryhausen's work. I mean,
He did-
not ruined it. He ruined the place where it could be
He killed the market for it
Yeah.
by creating
good special effects.
by creating
yeah.
Industrial Lights and Magic.
Yeah, I love Ray Harryhausen. Don't get me wrong, but like, there's a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
In quality.
It could have gone a very different route had he built on what Harryhausen was doing, but
Sure,
instead
sure.
he created his own
Sure.
brand. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
No. Other movies. Heavy Metal.
Heck yeah.
yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic.
Never
Love that
seen that one.
What?
Never seen that one.
You remember?
Get away. Go.
Remember how Matt was raised? He wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons
Yeah.
either. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
heavy metal is never going to be on the.
Nope. I did see History of the World Part 1 because
Yeah.
it was on late night on TV4 at my
Fantastic.
buddy's house.
Which, of course, History of the World Part 1 was released this year as
Next
well.
on the list.
Time Bandits.
Saw that a
Love that
long
movie.
time ago.
Which
Don't remember that one.
They actually have just announced they're making a TV series out of it.
Yep.
And it will have members of the original cast. Some of
Well,
the
the
living
ones that are alive,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
that's
still
a lot.
living members will be taking part in it.
Did Terry Gilliam do Time Bandits?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
he did.
because I love Gilliam, and that
Oh, yeah.
sounds like him. So.
Now, they did a little reunion recently with some of the people, and I was just like, man,
Yeah.
how are they going to pull this? But
Yeah.
hey, whatever. Now, one of my favorites, fantasy movies, still to this day, The Dragon Slayer.
Yes.
Fantastic.
I hadn't seen that until it was on at the Ram. No, at the place that's not there anymore. That just closed. That we always went to. Scotty's.
Scotty's.
Scotty's
down in
closed?
Indianapolis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so-
yeah, that's a good. I cut my teeth on that
Oh.
when I was a kid.
Oh my goodness, that movie! I watched it on repeat. You know that probably explains a lot about me.
See, Jesse said the same thing about Watership Down.
Yeah,
And I think that was McNichols. I can't remember his first name. I think his last name was McNichols.
Yeah.
That was his big role. I think his
Yeah.
first role.
So, but going into all this, let's go ahead and let's talk about Sandy Peterson.
Yeah.
So Sandy Peterson is probably one of the most prolific game writers of our time. RPG books as well as computer games. Going down a list of the things he's contributed to. Sid Meier's Pirates. Excellent game. Civilization. Lightspeed. Hyperspeed. Darklands. Doom, Doom 2, Ultimate Doom, Quake, Hexen, all those games right there in a row. You probably knew them. Now, Age of Empires, all the games that came out of there, Age of Empires 2, Rise of Rome, The Conquerors, The War Chiefs, that was all him as well.
I was a big Age of Empires fan.
Oh, yeah. And most recently, in recent years, as far as the computer and video games go, Halo Wars. So that's kind of an interesting toss in there. But what really has hit off kind of a thing for him was, so he did Call of Cthulhu in 1981, and that was a big release for him. And RPG-wise, he kind of stayed out of it for a while, but recently in 2015, he did Cthulhu Wars. And now he's started up Sandy Peterson's Cthulhu Mythos, which is putting out the Cthulhu Mythos stuff for Dungeons and Dragons again. Mm-hmm. And so they released a book for Pathfinder, and they've released a book for 5e, and they just, I think, are either wrapping up or finished, by the time this podcast is released, probably finished their brand new adventure path that will be taking place in Sandy Peterson's Cthulhu Mythos. Massive congratulations to him.
Yeah.
According to the story that I've heard with that release, they said that he had planned, he was leaving gaming entirely. He was like, I'm done. I have this dream. I'm going to put this out, and I'm walking away. I'm hanging up my spurs. And he did it, and it kick-started to the nth degree, and he's like, oh, well, maybe I still have some magic left. And so that's, kind of kicked off a whole new section of Sandy Peterson's career.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So now, moving back, I should say, Chaosium. Mm-hmm. Chaosium was established by Greg Stafford in 1975. And Greg Stafford, we've actually mentioned it in other podcasts. He passed away last year in 2018. Our hats definitely go off to Chaosium for all the contributions that he did. He was an amazing writer and amazing frontman for a gaming company.
Yeah.
So going on, so his company is kind of known for RuneQuest and HeroQuest, Glorantha, and Call of Cthulhu.
I thought RuneQuest just started off as just the video game.
As far as I understand, it was a role-playing game first. This was, yeah. I definitely want to throw out a little thing for some of our friends out there, and that is there's another podcast that does kind of something similar to what we do called the Vintage RPG Show. And they did an excellent tribute show in January of 2019 for Greg Stafford. And if you really want to know more about him and what he did with the corporation, I would highly recommend going and listening to that podcast. But going on, other things that Chaosium has done. It was one of the first publishing houses for a female lead designed RPG. And that was Carrie Campbell Robson's 1986 release of Hawkmoon. Has anybody ever... I'm sorry to ask, but has anybody ever heard of Hawkmoon?
No.
I have not.
So it's a very small release, very minor release. That was some years where a lot of RPGs kind of blended together, and it was a little bit of a smaller setting. But, yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Now, funny other thing about Chaosium. The LinkedIn founder, Reid Hoffman, lists this as his first paid job as an editor for Chaosium when he was 12 years old. So he would come over when Chaosium was being ran out of the house, and essentially they offered him the job. Heaven knows how serious they were in the matter, but yeah, they hired the guy who became the LinkedIn founder to be their editor.
Sounds crazy.
I had paper out at 12.
Yeah.
I wasn't editing anything.
I wasn't
was
even
playing with
editing my own
Legos.
school papers.
Right. Right.
I mean, God, if I was 12 years old, so you're 7th grade.
Yeah.
Putting it in thought.
Yeah.
7th grade. I had, in my life, I was a terrible reader. I hated reading. I avoided reading. And I wasn't even truly reading books until probably about 3 years before that point in my life. I was about 9 years old. I was in 4th grade when I finally really started reading books. Just because that's who I was. I was that little rebellious kid that's like, I'm not going to learn to read. I'm not going to learn to read. And then what do I end up doing? I have a library collection. I love RPG games, and I've edited and I've done other stuff. So,
Yeah.
hey. So here's the fun part, talking about the system, which I think y'all definitely have some familiarity with.
More
a
or
little
less.
bit. Yeah, we've done a couple of things here and there.
But so the Call of Cthulhu uses what they call their basic role-playing system. And it was first developed for RuneQuest and used in other Chaosium games. It is skill-based. So,
Yeah.
yeah. With players getting better with their skills by succeeding at using them for as long as they stay functionally healthy and sane.
So not very long at all.
Yeah. They do not, however, gain hit points, and they do not become significantly harder to kill.
No, they do not.
Oh, no.
You can jump off a fire escape and almost kill yourself.
Yeah. Or, as happened in one of our games, get launched out of a window from the second floor and land on your head.
Yeah.
Defenestration. It's the next new thing.
Yeah.
Next big thing.
And, of course, Call of Cthulhu does not have levels.
No.
Which I think is an important point for game developers out there. Because that's one of the things people say is that you can't pull people into a game. You know, in the development world, they're like, how do you get people to want to play your game, but not only want to play your game, but want to play your game long term?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, you have to have levels. You have to have reward building and everything else. And Call of Cthulhu has been around now for almost 40 years.
Good Lord.
And, and it does not have that.
Well, I think that, and because John and I have had this conversation about that other game you made us play. It starts with a W.
Wushu.
Wushu doesn't have a reward system for building more on the character. At least it didn't what I remember.
Not the version we played. It was a free version, but it was meant for one shots and single story things.
Call of Cthulhu hypothetically has a reward system if you roll well enough. There's a sense of accomplishment, and I think that a game that has that doesn't have to necessarily be in levels, especially. That's what I look for personally. So even like Fate, that doesn't have a reward system, there are still ways to modify your character.
Yeah.
It's one of the issues that I kind of have with Star Trek Adventures is that it doesn't have, like, you just get your character and you're kind of set. And yeah, you can advance, but it's very kind of nebulous.
Yeah.
So...
Well, in my experience with games like this, there's the old school D&D style that has the levels and the treasure and the reward system, but Call of Cthulhu, Fate, all those they fall under the storyteller system, and I mean that's what this actually, when you look it up, they'll call themselves a storyteller system, but because the point is to explore the world and the adventure that your game master has set up for you.
I have literally said, well, the rules don't really matter. Just enjoy the
Indeed,
game, and I'll walk you through it.
So it's a very different mindset between the two. There's a lot of discussion online where people are saying want to debate which is better. I don't personally think either one is better. They're just different, and you got to sit down and play what appeals most to you, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I agree entirely with that because, I briefly was toying with a concept for a show that I was calling like your Ace DM, and I talked about the idea that I have my style. I am very much a storyteller-driven game with bare minimum knowledge of the rules, the systems I'm usually running. Hate me if you want to. I don't care. That's how I run. But I have my cousin, my wife's cousin's kid. Mm-hmm. His father runs games, hardcore rules, battle, no role play, and so he's that kind of guy.
Sure.
Now, there are a lot of people that are like, that are going to say I'm wrong. There's a lot of people that are going to say he's wrong.
Right.
And then his kid runs somewhere in the middle of this, where it's like I have stories, but I also do a lot of combat battle style gaming.
Yes.
And so, it's one of those things where I think find a table that works for you is the big deal.
It is. I agree completely.
But anyway, sorry to go off a rant like that. Sam was, you've DM'd before, and you're big on storytelling as well.
Yeah, for a long time, it's like I'll do combat as a necessity. If just maybe it heightens the particular scene, or if it's just something that's just as part of the storyline, but I hated doing rules because it just slows the game. It just grinds it to a halt in some ways, where it's easier just to go boom, 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 just play it fast and loose with the rules. Okay, did I make it? Yeah, okay, yeah, it'll work. It works. We're good. You're pretty good. But yeah, just like hours and hours spent just nothing but battling, nothing but fighting and rolling, and is just that's kind of boring to me.
Well, yeah, and I get what you're saying. I find that there are certain gamers and certain times I want to play that game. Like, I love D&D for that. I want to get around a table and beat the crap out of some monsters with my friends. That's why I really like 4th edition. Like, the combat system in that is very fluid and works well together.
If everybody at the table is engaged.
Yeah, or understands their character enough to use their powers.
Yeah.
But I don't always want that. And especially when I'm running something, I would rather run something that is easier to flub a bunch of the rules. I mean, we ran Star Trek at Gen Con, and I don't think we knew the rules playing it.
We did not.
But I think that we told great story.
We did.
And that's what was important there. So
people had fun who stayed engaged.
Right,
yes.
right. So,
but this actually brings up an important point of Sandra Peterson. One of the concepts that he introduced into role-playing, like he's considered the father of, is what's called the onion skin, which is layers upon layers of plot, where you are given a very specific piece of information, and rather than doing a fetch quest, rather than going to a location to get an item, Sandy Peterson was like, you don't need to really go anywhere. You're looking for the information. And if you have to go somewhere for that information, you do. But maybe it's going to a different person. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's the right interview. Maybe it's the right investigation. And so he's like, you're peeling back the layers of the onion, going further and further down, rather than just travel, kill, get, travel, kill, get.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that is what he is considered to be the father of.
That's interesting. I had never heard that before, but that's a kind of a different way of explaining what we were talking about with the storytelling game is that analogy. So I like that.
Now, on to the physical product. Now, this is where kind of my knowledge ends, and really, Matt, I think yours kind of takes off.
We touched on this. I've touched on this before. So, like, in 81, first edition came out, and the difference between first and fourth edition is minimal. I mean, there are changes, but it was mostly like corrections and rule changes, and they weren't new additions. They were just corrections. Fifth edition made a bit of a leap. I don't remember quite what it did, but it did make a leap between what they were doing and what they were going to do in fifth and sixth edition, because those are very close together. But more importantly, first through sixth edition and now seventh, all of them you're a glass, I don't know, like spaghetti noodle fighter. Like, you're not good at anything. Nobody else is good at anything combat-wise, unless you're, like, trained for it, and then you're just going to see terrible stuff anyway, so it doesn't matter if you can fight it, because it's just going to make you go insane. There is no way... Cthulhu is one of the few games where I don't think there's a way to win unless survival is your goal for winning. And so it forces the game to make it more about the story.
Yeah.
It is I think it does a very good job of horror role-playing, storytelling. It does so much with what it's got. 7th edition did make a big jump between 6th and 7th. They changed some stuff around. They made it more dynamic. There's a chase system now that is pretty solid. There's some pushing luck stuff, or pushing rolls, where if you fail something and you're like, well, but I want to roll again, let me tell you how maybe it might have actually worked even though I failed on my first roll. But that's with the knowledge that if you fail again, it's not just like, oh, well, you failed to drive the car. It's, oh, well, you drove into a ditch and now the car is destroyed. Yeah. So, like, there are a lot more things going on in the newer system. It takes some of the teeth out of combat for certain things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It makes a lot of opposed rolls instead of singular rolls. So, like, it's not two guys both swinging swords at each other. It's two people in a sword fight.
It's an interesting way of thinking.
Yeah. So, in all the other system, all the previous editions, it would be like, I would swing my sword at you, and you would swing your sword at me. Now we both roll. Whoever gets the lower of the two rolls, they are the one that succeeds. If it's the defender, they can deal damage to the attacker.
Yeah.
So
which I've seen it's actually
So it becomes less about, well, it's my turn, so I'm obviously going to hit you or not. Now it's my turn. Gee, I hope you don't stab me in return. Like, and with the way that with the very, very few hit points, one of the ways I like to explain Call of Cthulhu is you typically have between 9 and maybe, if you're really lucky, like 15 hit points.
Yeah.
A shotgun does 46. You're likely going to be murdered.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. And that's a shotgun. Like the stuff from the Cthulhu mythos is like, oh, this thing is immune to all physical attacks. Also, it'll set you on fire. Like that's its power. It just sets you on fire. How are you going to fight? I have no idea. Right, exactly. You've already lost. So I've found players spend a lot of time avoiding combat. Or when it does happen, they get pushed out of a window by a bed.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. That was a fun story.
Yeah. That's a really good. That one's The Haunting, which is it's a standard. It was a standard staple for 1st through 6th edition. All of the editions come with like 2 or 3 short modules in them.
Nice.
And The Haunting was in 1st through 6th edition. It's not in 7th in the book, but it's easily adapted. But it is a nasty, like that. The bed pushing you out the window does a ton of damage, and it's just one encounter. The last fight can be really deadly.
Well, that's really, and like all of Lovecraft's stories, I cannot think of one where violence was really kind of a mainstay. If anything, it was very incidental.
Well, and even in Innsmouth.
Yeah, Shot of Innsmouth.
Yeah, like the government shows up with the military, and that's why they win, because they have lots of people with lots of guns, and that's it. Like,
well, do they win, or does it? They win.
They push the deep ones back into the water. They kind of win.
I was going to say, do the deep ones just turn around and be like, never mind, we don't want to do this right now?
No, because then they carpet bomb the ocean floor.
Oh, they did
with depth charges. Yeah,
I guess
so
that's true.
Yeah, they kind of win in that one, but
also in that story, the point of view character was running because he was intelligent
all the characters
enough.
Run.
Yeah,
I mean, they're like, oh, we can't deal with this. See you later.
And when they do confront, he goes bad.
Yeah,
every time. Like, oh, I'm going to stand up to. Oh my God, why am I bleeding?
Yeah,
and
if it has tentacles, run.
Yeah.
Run.
Yeah. So the systems are really good. I think 7th edition is a very solid system. There are some things I don't care about it, mostly because they want to put everything in hardback books and put a ton of pages in them. But it's not like they're not. The pages are not lacking quality.
Oh no,
it's all good stuff. So I'm like, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, recently, 7th edition did launch within the last, I think it's 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was 2017. 2017, 7th edition won 9 out of 10 Ennies that it was nominated for.
It was up against some good games that year too. It's a solid written system.
Yeah.
It's.
Yep.
And Sandy Peterson did come back for it.
Yeah.
So that's something important too.
Yep. And we also now have had the reissuing of the Masks of Nyarlathotep for 7th edition book, which
books. It's now plural.
Yeah. Which was originally written by Larry DiTillo.
Mm-hmm.
God bless him. Another guy who passed away this last year. Another amazing writer who is responsible for such things such as Fat Albert, She-Ra, all these cartoons we grew up with when we were kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and Masks of Nyarlathotep has been has been voted by other people as the best module out there. Period. Ever.
Yes. Ever.
And honestly, the 7th edition one looks even better researched and has better detail. The one I did have for 4th or 5th or 6th, I don't know. They're interchangeable.
Yeah.
It's solid. It's a really solid story, and they did a really good job with it.
Yeah.
So.
And also, like, one of the big things this year was the awesome box set by the H.P. Lovecraft Society, which is insanely expensive. I think it's like $200, $300.
It was $150.
Yeah.
For the base one.
And it comes with the newspaper articles and physical props for the Masks of Nyarlathotep game, so that you actually have the things to pass out to your players. Including
audio recordings as though it came from like a record player, so you could hear it in that audio,
scratchy audio.
Yeah, so it was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, this is as a gamer, that is like the height. A gamer who collects.
Sure.
That is the height of what I really would love to get my hands on. And I just am like that stokes me. I just like I want it so bad.
Yeah, it does look really good.
But obviously, I mean, one of the big questions I always bring up is, I mean, game system wise, do y'all have any favorite memories of this game, Call of Cthulhu? I mean, obviously, there's a podcast.
So
Right.
there was a character in the podcast once that they arrived in London and they were looking to track down some information, and they were pretty sure that the guy they were tracking it down from was a bad guy, and his name was Gavigan. So they went to Gavigan's office and demanded to see Gavigan, and he wasn't available. But part of the group was going to go do some research in the office's archives. Part of the research team was going to do something else, and then one of the guys was like, "You know what? We need this stuff from storage. I'm going to go with the clerk to go get stuff from storage." And I said, "Are you sure you want to go alone?" And he said, "Yeah, it's fine." And I said, "Are you sure?" He's like, yeah, it's fine. So then he got knocked out at the storage place and found himself being monologued to twice, not just once. Once in the carriage and then once in the dining room.
Yes.
And the second one, he was like, I'm not like tied down or anything. I was like, no. So he's like, okay, I pick up the chair. I'm not beat my way out of this. Defended himself against trained swordsmen with a chair. Went to jump out a window, tripped, fell, and smacked his forehead on the ground and fell unconscious.
I had so in the game with the rules we were using, I forget if it's still this way in 7th edition. You fall. I had 4 hit points after being clubbed over the head because I was running the character in question, and so you don't fall unconscious until you hit 3 hit points.
Two. Yeah. It's
Okay. 2. So he was going to tell me his grand plan, but we had already figured all that out. So I just decided, to go for broke. Tried to throw the chair through the window, and that was where my luck ran out after beating two trained swordsmen.
Yeah, he was
with
like
a chair.
He was like parrying with the chair. Like it was a good combat,
Yeah.
and he was just like, "No, you can't stab me."
Yeah.
It was great.
So yeah, and then my luck ran out as I threw the chair through the window. Didn't get a great roll, so it was broken, but there was lots of shards of glass still in the window pane. I was like, doesn't matter, I'm going. Tried to jump out the window, failed that roll, rolled minimal damage, so I was just unconscious again. Woke up to be as I was tied to an obelisk, and a crack in the sky opened up above us, and I almost got sacrificed to something from beyond time and space.
Yeah,
It was a great adventure.
that character lasted a little bit longer too.
Yeah.
And there's Call of Cthulhu in a nutshell. I almost got sacrificed, and it was a great adventure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Who was running that?
I was.
You are like really generous for saying, "Are you sure?"
No, the thing is, I asked, and no one at the table picked up on what I was saying. And then I asked again because we were at a point where, like, dividing the party is not the worst idea in situations where you take like 2 or 3 of you. We had 6 players,
And the other issue was one team was trying to do a thing that was completely useless, like waiting for this Gavigan guy to show up when we've announced that we're in town, we've announced we want to find him, we've announced we're in his office, and what is the bad guy going to do? Show up?
They did try and track him down at his home, which then they just ransacked his home.
that was when they saved me.
No, his home in London.
Oh, okay, yes.
Not
his
the
apartment,
house, yeah.
not the manor house.
Yeah, not the manor house.
So I was like, no, we've decided that Task B and Task C have real importance. The party has acknowledged that's what's important. But because this party member over here has a personal grudge, he is bound and determined to find this guy. And I'm like, no, the place we will find this guy is at the end of the road, not the beginning. and so nobody would abandon that task to go with me on Task C. I was getting a little frustrated, so I just said, "Screw it, I'm going."
Yeah.
And it was a fun decision, if not a good one.
This is the same game that I had 5 players at the table, and one of them survived the encounter. I didn't do a single point of damage. they saw an elder god. All but one of them lost their minds.
Yep.
Wow.
And it was all in like one fell swoop. And it was just like, what happened? You're all crazy now. So
Yeah.
hope this one guy can get you back to town. So yeah, it's a very harsh game, but it does horror very well. This is the kind of game that you can pull the mythos out of. I don't think that it's not terribly difficult, and throw other horror stuff in it. If you wanted to throw it like into
A vampire, a Wendigo.
a Wendigo, yeah, right.
Yeah.
If you wanted to throw it in like a cabin in the woods kind of feel to it, like all those monsters are really dangerous, and that may not be Cthulhu-ish, although cabin in the woods is kind of Cthulhu based, but it could be anything. The monsters are always going to be more dangerous. What makes it Call of Cthulhu, though, is that the more you learn about the monsters, the worse it still is for you, because it just eats at you.
A friend of mine, his game that he was a part of, the storyteller was he brought the insanity rules to his D&D game, but he applied it so ham-fistedly that at one point my friend was like, "I'm just not going to look at anything."
Yeah.
Anything he looked at, you go mad. He's like, "Fine, I'm just not going to look at anything," and just spent like several hours just swinging his sword in front of him with his eyes closed because it just got pretty ridiculous. But
I've heard other stories like that where somebody's like, I really like this aspect. I want to use it in this rule system that's different than what it was intended for.
Yeah.
And it gets out of hand.
Yeah.
Well, and Wizards of the Coast actually put out a 3rd edition D20 Call of Cthulhu game.
They did.
Yes,
that
they
they
did.
licensed, and it didn't have the same effect. It's just
No.
not.
Yeah.
D&D does not horror well.
Yeah, it's a pulp adventure, and
Yeah.
while Call of Cthulhu has pulp in it, it's not a pulp adventure. It's a
Yeah.
pulp
Yeah.
horror.
back when I want to say it was before AD&D, they came out with deities and demigods.
Yep.
And they had, and that's where I actually got exposed to the whole Cthulhu mythos. And it's very much like, if you see him, you have to roll versus insanity or whatever the saving throw was. But they didn't have that insanity table.
It's
So
like a
was
will save or something.
Yeah, oh, you
whatever that
survived.
was.
You made
yeah.
it. Okay, you're
Yeah.
fine. But,
Yeah. Well, that's the difference. I mean, when you're looking at fantasy games, you're usually playing a character who is ultimately going to become a mythic hero.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And trying to put Cthulhu into that setting where there is no being a hero.
Right. It loses some.
Yeah.
The flavors don't blend.
yeah, exactly.
Which I'm not trying to steal the thunder out of what Sandy Peterson is doing, because right now a D20 is the flavor of the day.
Yeah.
Well, and there are ways you could still play horror with 5th edition. You pull some hit points off of stuff, makes
Yeah.
it real quick and easy, but then you have to take hit points off of the monsters too.
Yeah.
But 5th edition also doesn't ramp like 3rd and 4th did. 5th
No,
edition
it does not.
ramps a little bit, but it is a much easier incline. 3rd edition was like, you hit 5th level and you might as well just turn up and turn your rocket booster straight on. Like that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it comes back to the mindset of the game as well. Like I think you could do a Cthulhu story with D20 rules, especially 5th edition. I agree with what Matt just said. The power creep isn't there,
Yeah.
Right.
like it was in previous D&D editions. But if you go in with the mindset that my barbarian can kill, a dragon, and Cthulhu has power, or Cthulhu has power like a dragon, that's not going to tell a Cthulhu story.
Yeah.
That's just where you got to be.
Yeah, which is the difference in style of horror as
Yeah.
well. Because like the hot thing is also gore and body horror, like torture
Yeah,
stuff.
I've done some of that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's very different from what Lovecraft set out to do.
Yes.
Cronenberg would be proud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I guess, talking about Lovecraft and what he does, I'm just going to go ahead and touch on this briefly, but talking about this game and talking about him, and we mentioned this in Cthulhu Tech, we're not discounting the fact that Cthulhu said some pretty horrible stuff. Or not
Lovecraft.
Cthulhu, Lovecraft said
Yes.
some pretty horrible stuff. And
Cthulhu will say horrible stuff when he wakes up. Yeah.
Lovecraft said some pretty horrible stuff and wasn't exactly the greatest human being.
No.
No.
Well, and part of that is a take things with their time, and he was from the 20s, and
Yeah.
the 20s were very heavily influenced by racism. That is very. The game is aware of itself, though.
Yeah.
They're aware that this is a terrible time, and they use the mythos to kind of explain a little bit. Like, well, people did all this exploring, but they woke things up, and that's why the world kind of went to crap.
Yeah.
So, like, there's some aspects there that are really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and in the end, it's a mythos
Right.
that was created. And so much has come out of that mythos.
Yes.
There are actually books now. There was a Kickstarter for a role-playing game that explored minority stories within the Lovecraft and Cthulhu mythoses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's kind of like another example. Bram Stoker, again, said some horrible stuff. The Lair of the White Worm is one of the most racist things you'll ever read in your life. But people do not discount the tale of Dracula.
Right.
No, I'm of the opinion that myself, and I've said this before, neither one of these people were alive when their mythos really took off.
Right.
And neither one of them have reaped financial benefit.
Right.
And so I really don't care myself.
Weirdly, Lovecraft didn't want to.
Yeah.
He didn't write to make money. He wrote because that's what he did.
Passionate about.
That's the thing he did. He made enough money to like feed himself, and that not even very well. Like he lived kind of like a hobo. I mean, honestly. One of the things I would say is if this, I think this is one of the better systems personally.
Yeah.
I think horror wise, it's great. It's easy to teach. There's some minutia that you have to really get into, but it's not that important.
Yeah.
If you're looking to tell a Call of Cthulhu story, I'm going to plug another podcast, by the way.
Yeah, no, please.
There's a podcast called The Good Friends of Jackson Elias. Paul Fricker, who helped write 7th edition, and Matt Dorwood both did 7th edition. They're two of the three guests. The other one is Matthew Sanderson, and he has written a bunch of stuff for the Call of Cthulhu. He also has run some of the best Call of Cthulhu games that I've ever played in. The three of them deep dive into stories, talk about how to make things more horrific, how to bring your characters focused. They're fantastic. The only problem I've ever had with them is that because they're all British, I can't listen to them at the higher speed that I normally do because their accents throw me off. So that's the problem I have. The content is quality.
Nice. All right. Well, obviously, the final question of the moment that I always love to ask, and I think it's an obvious answer, but of course, would you want to play this game?
Yeah, I specifically made Johnny run it so I could play it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we set to make a podcast, I chose Call of Cthulhu because of the story elements of it and the way it can let us tell a story. Dungeons & Dragons can go this way, but it's not built in. And Call of Cthulhu doesn't build it in. It just is like, well, what else are you going to do? Just roll some skills? Like, that's stupid.
Truth.
So, yeah, no, I love this game.
All right. John.
Oh yeah, no. Like Matt summed it up. It fits with my storytelling preferences. So I'm down to play it when and wherever, anytime. So.
And Sam.
I actually, the only time I have played Cthulhu was Chaosium in the mid-90s. We played one game. I think I was a PI.
Yeah, that's pretty typical.
And that was the only time we ever played. I've never played it since, which upsets me greatly. And of course I'd love to, because I'm a huge Cthulhu fan anyway. But yeah, heck yeah, I would.
Yeah.
But before we if I may interject,
please.
for individuals who play Cthulhu and want to actually get to know more about it, I cannot advertise this book enough. The new annotated H.P. Lovecraft, Leslie
good.
Klinger.
Yeah.
I've got it, 550 pages of loveliness of trivia.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic book.
And almost all of Lovecraft's writings are short stories, so you can. The horror in Dunwich,
Dunwich Horror,
is in the player guide. The whole of the story. It's like 8 pages because they're bigger pages, but it's not a long story.
Yeah.
None of his stuff is super long. I think Shadows over Innsmouth is one of his longer ones. It's
it's a bit long.
It's still not that long comparatively.
Yeah, the longest one is Dream Quest of Unknown Kadaf.
Yeah. So, also, if you read Lovecraft, don't be prepared to know that you're not going to be able to pronounce anything. It took me forever to say Nyarlathotep. I had to go look it up on the internet.
Yep, but it was meant that way. And as for myself, yeah, of course. Now, here's a thing that I don't know if Matt knows. You were the first GM to ever run Call of Cthulhu for me.
Nice.
So I have actually never played this game until recently, even though I'm a fan of the mythos.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we're actually going to continue on with podcasting and a upcoming Twitch stream with it.
Yeah, by the time this comes out, we should have already put out our first Twitch game, which is you and Roxy. David's been on this before, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
David is part of it, and then a friend of John and Roxy, his name is Sean, will be twitching.
Twitch, yeah.
Yeah, we'll be streaming Masks of Nyarlathotep the story. You can find us at twitch.com/quietgentleman.
Yep.
That's MAN, gentleman. So that's us. Or it's not twitch.com, it's twitch.tv. Sorry, twitch.tv/quietgentleman.
There we go. All right, guys. Well, hey, next episode is going to be coming out here soon. We hope you enjoyed our return to our standard format, away from just talking to creators for a bit. See y'all soon. Bye.
Podcast presents The Tome Travelers.